Thank you all for joining me here today. Today I am here with Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki, and we, as usual, are going to talk about the lovely trials and tribulations of overcoming things in life. Whether it be trauma, whether it just be crappy situations, we all go through it, and that's why we're here. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's just my absolute pleasure to be here.
It's an honor. I'm glad that I caught you in the first 10 recordings of the first season.
Oh, I didn't realize that, and so I definitely feel honored.
What have been the big moments for you, whether going through them or whether looking at them in hindsight, that really changed your life?
Yeah. So that it I can answer both ends of those questions pretty easily. So the biggest thing that happened for me is my sister Lauren died in a car accident in 1998. So it's about 25 years ago. The grief that I experienced through her death was quite overwhelming. In fact, way back when, nobody really validated sibling loss. Everything that I experienced was completely invalidated because I had to be strong for my parents. I had to be, you know, there to protect them and there to help, do all the things that they couldn't do because their grief was so much bigger than my own, which is actually not true. It's different for sure, but they say that there are no hierarchies in grief, but there definitely are, especially when it comes to sibling loss. And so I recently have become very passionate about telling my story because so many bereaved siblings out there feel inferior, they feel invisible, they feel unacknowledged for all of the things that they're going through. In fact, I run a peer support group every Thursday night, and last night on my meeting, the whole meeting was about how most bereaved siblings are completely non-acknowledged for all the grief and the work that they put into and the caretaking and all that kind of stuff. So the biggest life changer for me was the loss of my sister, and I did not want to identify at all for many years with that loss. I just shut it down. I put it in a little box. I stored it away, and I'm like, but that wasn't serving me. I was keeping all my emotions kind of close to the vest, not sharing with anyone, not getting the help or support I needed, so that this way it was all just piling up and piling up and piling up. And then one day I was like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live alone. I can't, you know, deal with this on my own. So I had to find new strategies in order to do that. And eventually, many years later now, goes maybe about 5 years ago, I decided to use all the strategies I had learned for 20 years to help other people. So I've now taken that, and have become the person I wish I had 25 years prior. So that's a little bit about me and my story and what what my biggest struggle.
And I'm really sorry you went through it, but I'm glad that you have come out the other side
Yep.
in a healthy manner.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's when we're going through it, we don't realize that our biggest challenge is our biggest growth opportunity. Um, right?
Exactly.
It's going to make you people say, oh, I would want my sibling back. I'm like, I would too, but I have a caveat with that. I don't want to forget all that I've learned in the last 25 years because the the gifts in my life right now from my struggle are absolutely incredible. Like, I wouldn't have had the strength to go out on my own and do something different. I wouldn't have had the ability to have compassion for other people. I was very self-focused. I was like, me. And then she passes, and I'm like, oh, it taught me to be more open with other people, to be more emotionally available with other people, to hold less back. Because I knew with my sister, she died in a car crash, and so she was here 1 minute and gone the next. I didn't have the opportunity to say goodbye. I didn't have the opportunity to tell her how much she meant to me. And so that's my learning lesson, is that I don't want to hold back to the people I love. I really need to be honest, and that may even be setting some boundaries. I had to set a lot of boundaries with my parents early on in my journey, because they were on top of me all the time. And I
Mhm.
understand why, and I don't love them any less, but for my own growth and for my own, emotional and mental and physical well-being, I had to put some boundaries, and those boundaries were out of love. And so, I had to do all of those things to keep myself safe, and keep myself
Right.
safe. And then then I'm able to deal with other people.
See, and unfortunately, on a level, I can relate to all of this because when I was 17, one of my childhood best friends was taken in a murder suicide.
Mm,
And I grieved the loss of her like a sister really, really difficultly for the first 6 years.
mhm.
It's now been 10 years, and now I can hold like all of that time we had together in love and light, and also like all of the lessons in the last decade.
Right.
But in that process, like that was one of the big three things that made the hardest year of my life at the way that it was.
Mhm,
And in that time period, like no one could console me. None
mhm.
of the adults in my life understood losing someone that meant that much,
Yeah.
especially before the prefrontal cortex is fully developed,
Mhm.
when all emotions are times at least 1,000.
100.
It was not a great time.
Yeah.
But now it's just no. I had that time with her. It was really special. And yes, I would bring her back, but I'd also like probably go back to sparring with her like we did in sport. Be like, no, I need to kick your ass for this one. This was a bad decision.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
and it also reminds me too, there are so many, like, the more I get involved in like the sort of the grief space, the more I realize how many holes there are. And like, so the loss of a sibling was one hole. It's starting to sort of get filled in, but the best friend, so like you loved her like a sister, but she biologically wasn't your sister, right? Like that is like there's a little hole there. And so I'm like, oh my God, like why is that? Like that's my question, is what, like everyone's gonna go through it. Everyone's gonna lose a
exactly,
best friend, a parent. Like, why are there so many holes, and why can't we talk about it openly and honestly?
exactly. And at that point in my life, I was already in weekly counseling. So like after they had found out about it before I was even back in school that Monday following,
Mm,
and immediately pulled me in. Like, no, no, you need help. You just went through this, and we know your relationship to this person.
mhm,
That wasn't helpful then. I was in the anger and the denial
mhm.
because I mean, I laid on the floor for a couple days and cried when I found out.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that a lot of times, like counselors and even therapists, and now what I'm about to say is not about bashing the therapists or the counselors, but they really mean well, and they think that but they only work with the way you think and the way you feel, and that's why I'm a somatic grief therapist, and I work with the body just for that reason, because everything has physiology connected to it, right? Like you curled into a ball and you were on the floor. So your body is recording all, not just the emotions, but the thought patterns
Mm-hmm.
that come up because of it. And we have to deal with it, not just mentally and emotionally, but also physically as well. Because they get all of that grief and all of that sadness and all of that negative thinking and all of that just gets stacked in the cells, and that leads to our habits of, do we eat well? Do we exercise? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we engaging in self-care? And when I say self-care, I don't mean, oh, going for a massage every month, which it could mean that, but it's really just taking care of your basic needs of getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, taking a shower, eating doesn't need to be healthy. Just eating sometimes is an act of self-care. And, I always take a physiology first approach, even to our emotional and our mental health.
And so do I. Using my background in high risk social work and my training in traditional indigenous medicines, it's looking at everything holistically.
Yeah,
Yes, your mind is having this response, but if you can't control it with your emotions and your thought patterns, do you
yeah,
need exercise? Do you
yeah,
need to deal with this creatively, either, in an artistic sense, or maybe you love cooking. Maybe
yeah,
maybe you can process this while chopping vegetables
yeah,
and jamming out to music while you cook in the kitchen and then you feel better. I'm one
yeah,
of those people. I will find any artistic sense before I've fully processed it and I'm actually ready to talk about it. And that's
right.
why, even in my own practice, it's okay. Well, you have this constant anxiety from this trauma you experienced a long time ago. Are you also drinking 72 ounces of coffee a day? Like,
Yeah, right.
let's switch some of that out for green tea so that
Yeah.
you get the natural L-theanine, even just as that low dose anti-anxiety to caffeinate yourself, but take the edge off.
Yeah, right. And even just simple things like, drinking a little bit more water, or making sure, or just taking a multivitamin. Like, it does, especially omegas. Omegas are absolutely
Mhm.
amazing for brain health. Like, I can't tell you how much, like, if your body is being having the nutrients that it needs, then your brain can function more clearly and more focused. And that just changes everything. Sleep is another one. The research is showing if you're not getting a good 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that's actually sometimes more important than diet and exercise, sometimes combined. So, sleep patterning is really important to our mental and emotional and physical health.
It exactly. I have to agree because I myself, through my own trauma recoveries, that there were years where it was an hour a night. And for
Oh,
some reason, because I was in a constant flight or flight state,
yeah.
that it didn't even affect me. And then
Wow.
magically one day I started sleeping for 4 hours a night. And then a few
Yeah.
years later it was six.
Yep.
And now it's an average of 8 to 10. And I look at it and I'm like, how did I exist for 3 years on an hour a night?
Right.
How did
Well,
I do that?
your anxiety and your emotions dictated how, right? Like, we can do it, doesn't mean we should do
It exactly.
it.
It was not healthy. I definitely could have died from sleep deprivation. I'm not encouraging the habit by any
Right.
means.
Right. And that 7 to 9 is like the optimal, like, that's like the zone. That 7 to 9, they're just showing, depending on, there's so many different factors involved in that. But 7 to 9, and if you need one tip, like, consistency of bedtime and consistency of wake time. So, like, just set it, if I'm a midnight to 7, I've shifted it a little bit, like, lately, so it's like 11 to 6:30. But weekends, weekdays, I'm in bed by like 11 and the latest. And so that this way there's that consistency, and our body needs that consistency. And if there's one day I'm hanging out with some friends and I'm up till 12 o'clock, I make sure I get up at 6:30 still, so that the next night I can just recalibrate, because I find that the body needs that consistency, especially with sleep.
And I'm just like you. I same bedtime, same wake up, but recently my sleep schedule got thrown.
Hmm.
And from my normal of 11 to 7, 12 to 8 in there,
Yeah, yeah.
it's now 9 to 5.
Mhm.
I'm okay. I'm super chipper in the morning. But now there's this level of grumpy because I need like 3 extra cups of caffeine because for me, my big REM cycle sleep happens between 5 and 8. If
Right.
I'm not getting any of those, it's no, I got baseline sleep. Somebody pinch me. Keep me awake, please.
Yeah.
I'm perky on the outside, but I'm still a little bit dead on the inside because I didn't get any of the quality sleep.
Well, and yeah, that's so like, and it doesn't matter. Some people think that like, oh, I'm a night owl. Like you have to honor. There's like there's the reality of an early bird or a night owl. You have to know what times of day you function the best, and there's no cookie cutter. But
No,
it's like if you're a night owl, then maybe 12 to 12 to 7, 12 to 8 is a good thing. If you're a morning person, then maybe a 9 to 5. But as you may be experiencing, you're a little bit of that night owl, but you're trying to, trying to shift it to early bird, right? Like, and we all have rhythms. Like I like the night too, so that's, we have, but
right?
you have to honor that part of yourself and that part of your journey as well.
Exactly. And right now I need to decide, am I gonna go to bed at grandma time, or am I going to try and hold on to what remains of my youth and
Yeah.
go to bed between 11 and 12 at night?
Yeah,
And
I did that. For me, it's my eating habits, right? I wind up eating dinner about like 5 o'clock, so I call it like the blue plate special because that's when like my grandmother used to have like dinner, and then I try not to eat in the evening if possible, like to kind of give myself that. And I don't want to call it intermittent fasting, but that's
mhm,
sort of like what that's sort of the pattern that I'm on now. I don't get too hung up on those things. I really listen into my body and decide, okay, wait, I'm really hungry. I'm not going to sleep if I don't grab a little nibble. And so I'll kind of go into that. But big meal is done by like probably 6:30 the latest. So yeah,
right? And I love that you touch on just listening to your body,
yeah,
because whatever the diet, the whatever methodology or system you choose to follow, there has to be leeway. You have
yeah,
to give yourself like the honor and the forgiveness to just be like,
hmm,
no, today I need something different.
yeah,
Today I need to break this fast or this diet and have the snack.
yeah,
Because ultimately, like, it's not just affecting your physical body, that will truly affect your mental health in both positive and negative ways if you are restricting to the point that, you're hungry enough to stay awake. That's not
yeah.
okay.
No, right.
Like your diet is too much of a diet and not just a lifestyle
Yeah.
change.
Well, and I heard this the other day that like you don't want to weaponize your like your pattern, like your healthy eating, right? Like you can totally weaponize it. Oh my God, I had a cookie. Oh my God, right? Like, and you can weaponize it even against your own self, right? Like, and then all of a sudden this cookie becomes way more than just like having a little snack or a little comfort, right? It's about making the choice. Sometimes, listen, I get emotional, I get sad, and sticking a cookie in my mouth just gives me that comfort that I need. And I can acknowledge that, right? Like, but it's when I go for then when I'm putting the eighth cookie in my mouth and I've like gone way above what I'm comfortable with myself, that's when like, or I'm like, hold time out. Like, let's really look at this pattern, right?
Right? Like, sometimes you need the emotional bowl of chips.
Yeah.
It's more of a problem when it's the emotional bag of chips. But as
Yeah.
long as you can acknowledge it and correct the behavior, even gradually,
Yeah.
then it's less of an issue. Like, I'm sorry, life may feel very short. You got
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Like the
Well,
yes, the clock could run out tomorrow, but you still need to enjoy everything as best as you can.
yeah. When you said like that, having like 10 cups of coffee, right? Like I have a client that actually drank literally 10 cups of coffee throughout the day. And one of the things she told me was she's like, I'm not giving this up. I said, okay, I'm not going to ask you to give it up. But over the course of maybe about 8 or 9 weeks, we got her from 10 cups down to like one or two. And she's like, and then someday she had none. So like she's like, wow, like, and she was adamant about not giving up the coffee. I'm like, listen, I drink coffee as well. I love the flavor, but I put limits on it. I can love it and have discipline around it also, right? Like because I need to do sometimes the thing that doesn't feel good in the moment is actually good for you in the long run. But then when you go into something that feels good in the moment, but not good for you in the long run, that's where like I try to switch those behaviors in my own self and, and with my clients too, because we have to think of us long term, right?
Exactly. And that's a big problem in our society because we are so hung up on the instant gratification and the
Mm,
short-term win that, yes, my own generation doesn't know how to achieve a long-term goal or
right.
wait for it. Like,
uh,
that's why I'm considered a trailblazer because I was set on the goal, and even when I strayed, I stuck to it.
yeah.
It was, no,
Yeah.
we need to keep moving forward to achieve this.
Right.
And,
Right.
well, why am I such a hard ass on myself? Well, that's because I was a vegetable, and then my best friend got murdered, and then I got assaulted a whole lot. I had to be very hard on myself to keep myself in line.
Yeah.
But now I'm just looked at like, oh, this high achiever that is actually
Yeah.
happy because she dealt with her shit instead
Yeah.
of pushing it on everyone else anymore. An
Right.
emphasis
Well,
on anymore. I had my time periods. They were not
yeah.
healthy, but they're better now.
Well, and I think that's really what you said is really important is just taking responsibility, right? Like taking responsibility for whatever you see in your life. Like because I can easily blame somebody else for me feeling, oh, I could blame my sister's death on, oh, I can, tearing up my life and causing me to push all my emotions down. I can blame her for that for sure. But that's not like I have to learn my lessons. Like, what are the lessons for me to learn out of this? And I feel we all come into this world kind of know, we forget the lessons that we're supposed to know, but we come in with like a contract that, all right, I'm here to learn about this thing. And my sister came in knowing that maybe her life wasn't going to be so long, but my lessons are to learn to live without her and learn about mortality and that movement through life and not taking any moment for granted and telling all the people that that you love them and that kind of stuff. So those are the lessons I have to learn, and I have to take 100% full responsibility for those lessons. And when you can do that, I think you're able to move through whatever challenge, whatever struggle you're going through, you know, uh, but you don't always see that in the moment.
Exactly. And the accountability is often the hardest piece. Even when we meet people at the beginning of any of their healing journeys, they're not ready to be
No.
told, hey, you play an active role in this.
Yeah.
And if you want to fix it, it's your habits, your behaviors, your attitude towards it. All of
Mm-hmm.
those pieces have to shift.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
even when I talk to my best friend on the phone, probably every day,
Yeah.
like, it's okay, I'm a little bitchy today, be warned. And then she generally pokes me until I'm laughing, like, almost hysterically. Because
Yeah.
she's poked enough fun at my bad attitude that I see the hilarity of the situation, and I can't contain how ridiculous I am because we all get in moods. Like, you're gonna have crappy days
Yep.
where you don't want the job anymore. You don't want the lifestyle. And yeah, sometimes it's a day, but if you hold on to that feeling and you're stuck with it, you probably need some life or some lifestyle changes.
Yeah, and sometimes movement, like I think is the quickest way to change your emotional and mental state, right? And it doesn't have to be like I'm a yoga instructor, but it doesn't have to be like an official practice. Like do a 5-minute dance break, put on a song and just jam out. Like go for a walk, do 10 jumping jacks. Like it doesn't need to be complicated. And I think what we do is we really complicate what it takes to change. Like we get so invested in our own emotional state that we forget that we have the power to change it, and it doesn't need to be complicated, you know?
Exactly. Like, do a single lap around the block.
Right.
It'll take probably 7 minutes. And
Or
then
you, yeah.
suddenly, like, there's enough dopamine in your brain to get you through the rest of the day without any of that anger, grief, frustration.
Yeah.
It's much more simple than we make it out to be, and that is why in my private practice, like I really focus on all the holistic ways we can heal.
Mm,
Because yes, medication is fantastic, but we
yeah.
often don't want to be on them forever.
Yeah. I love that. That's totally my philosophy too. I am a very like let's look at diet, look at exercise. I always think let's look at lifestyle first. And if you need some medication, not that you'd come to me for that, like you get the medication that you need to maybe take the edge off, but then like you can totally work out with as you said, getting the right nutrition, getting, I work with essential oils as well, and there's some really amazing therapeutic grade oils that can help change your emotions, change your mind, affect your body. So like let's go with those strategies first, and then if you need a little extra support, then go down the medical route. And maybe it's going on them temporarily and then coming off, or it's maybe staying on low doses for a while.
Exactly.
Everyone's body is different, everyone's mindset is different, and you got to find a strategy that works. That's the key, I think.
Exactly. It's truly, as you said in the beginning, none of this is one size fits all.
No,
And
no,
that
no,
is
no.
why I never hand a person a booklet and say, this'll cure your depression.
Yeah.
I'm not a westernized psychologist.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't say, oh, here's your magic cure to depression, 10 pages of reading.
Yep. Well,
Like,
I was going down that Western psychology approach, and I realized though that sometimes it's more about the system than it is the person. And when we look at patterns, you got to look at your own patterns. We create patterns don't, one, they don't lie, right, and they don't discriminate, because our healthy habits our healthy habits, our unsupportive habits. The more like, and when you look at them together, you guys see which do I do more and which do I do less, and how do I do more of what I want to and make it easier for me to do those things, and how do I make those unsupportive habits harder to do, because then once they're harder to do, you'll do what's ever easiest first.
exactly. Because in our animalistic traits, we're always going to subconsciously take the easy way out.
100%.
It's just because we are mammals.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
and I love adding, like when I notice I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing, but I'm doing it like it's because it's habitual. I try to figure out how can I put a friction point there. And I'll give you an example. Like I love binging out Netflix. I got a couple of shows that totally I love, but then I wind up spending too more time than I would like to do doing that. Like, and so what I did was that I took my remote controls and not keep them on the coffee table, but I put them in a closed cabinet, so that one little friction point, if I want to watch TV, just I have to think about it for an extra second, because I have to open up the drawer to do that, and so that one little friction point makes my behavior a little bit more conscious and buys me some time to decide if this is what I want to do, or I can bag the whole thing.
and I do something similar, but with me, it's on my laptop.
Mm.
So instead of having the laptop within bed's reach, it is now 6 feet away from me, and it's okay.
Yep.
I either have to roll off the bed or I
Yep.
have to get up. And
Yep.
that is always such a hard debate. It's nope, nope, it's not worth it. We're not
Yep.
doing more of this today because I'd have to get up and lay back down. I might as well get up and do something else.
Correct. Yeah, and that's that perfect friction point, right? Like you could do the same thing. I always say the same thing about food, right? Like our diet starts at the supermarket. What you buy is what you're going to consume. So if you're buying cookies and cakes and all that kind of stuff, right? Like what are you're going to eat it. It's because it's in the house. But if you don't have it in the house and you're like, "Oh, I have to go out. Is it really worth it? Am I going to do that thing?" And that's a great friction point where don't go to the supermarket hungry, have your list, say to your list, and then buy those things, because what you buy you're going to eat, and
Right?
it
My
yeah.
my dietary friction point is that the snacks that I keep in the house are snacks that I barely enjoy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah,
It's,
yeah,
well, I don't even like this. Of course I'm gonna have one just to get this the craving of a snack, but I'm not gonna have five.
yeah. I've done a lot of like I have a huge sweet tooth, so like my thing is that late I bought a dehydrator last year, and now I'm like dehydrating a ton of like fruits and stuff. So when I have that sweet tooth, I'll go for some like banana chips or apple chips
Exactly. Like
rather than like
mango.
yeah. I know I need that, and because it's the summer and it's starting to get really hot, to have make sure I have pineapple and watermelon and those kinds of things in the refrigerator, because that craves my sweet tooth, but in a healthy, in a little bit of a better way.
Right? Well, in only feeding my mouth, if I don't want to have a whole cantaloupe, watermelon, pineapple, I will occasionally just treat myself to the fruit tray.
Yeah,
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 it's an expensive way to do it, but then, I'm eating it in the portions that I can actually handle as one person without
yeah,
wasting all that food while still having variety,
100%. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
right? What's one word of advice you would give your younger self?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. Um, Lately I've all right, so I know exactly what this is because it's been something I've been working on more recently. So recently I've connected what I do to my worthiness as a human being. And right, and they're not connected at all. They're not like I as you are like that high achiever. I sometimes feel if I'm not doing the things, all the things, that my worthiness is affected in some way. And so I am working on just finding that worthiness within myself exactly as I am. And I know I'm on the right path, and that every part of my life is happening for me rather than to me. And any challenge that I'm going through, and I'm getting emotional as I'm even sharing this, I can feel it in my heart, right? Like that worthiness, you are worthy just as you are. I am worthy just as I am. I don't have to do anything different to deserve all of the dreams that I have, all of the love that's in my heart. Like I'm just worthy for all of it, just as I am.
Exactly. You are worthy because you are you and because you are alive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, because you have a heartbeat, you
yeah.
have inherent worth. Nothing you do, nothing you say,
Right.
it's just because you are who you are.
Right. And I'm realizing that like the worthiness connected to achievement is been conditioned in me for since my since I was a kid, that oh, you have to work hard and do the thing, and that's how we're gonna love you, right? Like not just for my parents but for my grandparents and my great grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about working and achieving and doing these things to get love. But I don't need to do those things to get love. I get love just because I'm me, just because I'm myself. I don't need to do the things.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
so
that's,
much for joining me here today, Jason.
yeah, this was such a pleasure. Oh, my heart is open and full right now.